Respecting the self, Brahma Jnana Valimala, Antarjyotihi, Bahirjyotihi, Pratyakjyotihi, Parat Para, Jyotireva Jyotihi, Swayam Jyotihi, Atma Jyotihi, Shivosmyaham. I am the supreme light of awareness, illuminating the outer world of objects, inner world of thoughts, and deep sleep state. I am divine light of the nature of auspiciousness, your Swarupi. Guru Vandana. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo, Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat, Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. He who guides you on the righteous path is a guru. When a parent or teacher or a friend or an animal or a bird or a plant conveys message of righteousness, they embody a guru. A guru's knowledge encompasses the creation, maintenance, and transformation at all times. A guru represents the voice of the Creator, himself in showing the righteous path for all beings at all times. Voice of the divine is revealed through the message of the Guru. अखण्डमण्डलाकारं व्याप्तं येन चराचरं तत्पदं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः. Guru can guide us to the supreme knowledge of that which pervades all the living and non-living beings in the entire universe, namely Brahman. I salute such a Guru. Respect to Guru Parampara. Narayana Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Sadashiva-samarambham Shankaracharya-madhyamam Asmadacharya-paryantam Vande Guru-paramparam. Beginning with Narayana through Adi Shankaracharya, in between and up to my own preceptor, I bow with reverence to the entire tradition of preceptors. Beginning with Sadashiva through Adi Shankaracharya, in between and up to my own preceptor, I bow with reverence to the entire tradition of preceptors.
Thank you very much, Saravananji. Hari Om to all the divine Atma Jyotis. So, I just thought of summarizing what is the purpose of our study circles and the approach that we have adopted here. We have spent about 6 or 7 sessions right now. So we have some idea and some understanding, but just wanted to deepen the thought process and the feeling system behind this. So I shared yesterday these questions also in the group. but just going through them here in case if there is any discussion needed. So the first is, what is the purpose of the study circle, the Atma Jyoti Vedanta study circle? It is fundamentally for Atmano Mokshartham Jagaditaya, self-realization and service to the world. So among all the various systems of self-realization, Vedanta system is a system that has been contributed by great rishis and various masters over thousands of years. It's a very, very simple system which draws from our day-to-day experiences. For example, here, there is no talk about various kinds of mystic experiences or various kinds of sadhanas with which you have to identify various mysterious experiences, and then only it will be really revealed. Here, it is very simple day-to-day experience, and through the day-to-day experience, clarity is being pointed at. So it's a well time-tested and proven system. So even if, for example, the teacher who is telling you something has a misunderstanding in the clarity, there is always a system to fall back to. You can always refer to what is the interpretation of the same truth by Shankaracharya, or what does the Vedantic text itself says in this matter. So like that, like typical science study, in a science study, when something becomes a science, let's say theory, it is not just something that somebody comes one day and then says and others have to accept it. It is usually, there is a rigor. There's a rigor of the particular paper being published and being peer reviewed, and then only it being approved. Same is the case with Vedanta. It's a time tested, though there may be so many great preceptors and their inner revelations may be there. Unless what they're talking is in line with Vedanta, it cannot be verified. So in that way, it's a wonderful system which is independent of any particular human being's corruption of the mind. Human mind can corrupt in some ways. So Vedanta is unlike that. So that is why we are adopting Vedanta as our primary system for understanding here. Then in Vedanta, what is the typical process that is recommended? It is Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasa. What is Shravana? Shravana is listening to the teachings by who we consider as the realized master. So for our purposes, here we are listening to the teachings of Vedantic text by Sri Prabhuji, who in turn relies on Sri Shankaracharya's interpretation, his own understanding from Sri Atmananda Menon. Like that, he draws from there, but ultimate authority is Vedantic system itself, Vedanta text itself. Even in fact, Prabhuji also says, if what I am saying is incorrect, you should always refer to the source itself. It is not possible that I may be correct all the times. I may be making a mistake. So don't just go by what I am saying. So in that way, it's a system. But for us, the teachings have to be heard somewhere first. And that is where we are relying on Prabhuji. It is not that it is only his teaching that we have to listen to. But in the beginning stages, it is better to focus on one teacher's teaching so that it gets established. So that is the Shravana process. Then comes the Manana. So Manana is what we are doing through these contemplation sessions. Manana is what we do when a particular quiz is asked in the group, when we are interacting, when questions are come, and we all try to give understanding. Nididhyasa is through the meditations to start abiding in these truths all the time. So this is the process. And for the process, there has to be a path also. So what is the path? So typically, the Vedantic texts are organized into Shravana Granthams, Manana Granthams, and Nididhyasa Granthams. Because here, the Grantham is also one of the source of authority. So Shravana Grantham, the recommended path is Tattva Bodha, Viveka Chudamani, Aparoksha Anubhuti, Bhagavad Gita, and Upanishads. And Manana Granthams would be Brahma Sutra, Advaita Makaranda, then Atmadarshana program by Prabhuji, Sri Ramana's teaching, Sri Krishnananda Menon's teaching. So these are all Manana. So it is typically during Manana that diverse viewpoints can be brought. This is what I heard from somewhere else. And can we reconcile that? This is what I'm hearing from somewhere else, and it is not reconciling with this. So this kind of alternate viewpoints is typically during the Manana part, when we are studying the Manana Granthams. Then comes Nididhyasa. So Drik Drishya Viveka, for example, is a Nididhyasa stage. So this is the recommended path. And here, this is kind of the approach that we are also following. After we complete the Tattva Bodha, the next we will be picking up is Viveka Chudamani. See, Tattva Bodha itself is almost like there are 14 to, I think, 16 or so days of talk by Prabhuji. Viveka Chudamani has close to about 108 talks. So it's a gradual evolution. It cannot be a one day's sudden transformation. Again, there are inner experiences that could be there with each one of us. But here, we are talking about science. Like, for example, to be a PhD student, there is a gradual process, right? That is what we are talking here. Then that kind of brings us to the last question. Is it okay to bring other interpretations? It's absolutely fine. There is nothing wrong. It is not that, what Prabhuji is saying is the authority and we only have to listen to Prabhuji's talks. It's absolutely fine to listen to others. But it is, what is the stage in which, we are here in this group studying, and is it relevant to that particular thing? Based on that, we have to look at that. As mentioned earlier, it is advisable to bring these alternate viewpoints during the Manana stage of our group's study. By that stage, we would be established in a certain way, and then we'll be able to interpret it appropriately. Otherwise, it may cause confusion. For example, the same Upanishadic scripture, when you read it in the light of Madhvacharya's teachings versus the light of Sri Shankaracharya, it may appear to be two distinct ways of interpreting. And that is where, if you also see, many people get into various kinds of arguments. This is right, this is wrong. Neither is wrong. It is a way of understanding, and it's a whole system. Sri Madhvacharya did not take one line and then interpret it and went away. He has given a whole system, whole path. So if one has to follow, then one has to follow the whole path. Then only they will understand Sri Madhvacharya's viewpoint of what he means by Dvaita. Or when Shankaracharya ji says it is Advaita, actually there is no conflict in their interpretations. It is when we see one viewpoint and at one particular context, and when we miss the whole context, we may get confused. That's why there is a great Vedantic statement, Ekam Sat Vipra Bhauda Vadanti. The truth is one, but the known may say it in different ways. And when we hear only one part of what they're saying, we may have a tendency to misunderstand. So therefore, it is important to follow a process, a system. And then once when that becomes clearer and crystallized, we can definitely, and we have to, because there are so many viewpoints. Some of them may seem like, oh, it's in conflict. And it is very, very important to bring those viewpoints and to reconcile. But we will be doing that later. All right. So let me stop here. Any questions or any alternate viewpoints that anybody wants to share at this point of time? All right, wonderful. So I just thought we should kind of reaffirm our process and why we are doing what we are doing. Then let us go into our today's contemplation. So just to summarize quickly, so far we have gone through the Adhikari, that part of the Tattva Bodha, through the first 3 days of talks by Prabhuji, where the fourfold qualifications, then what is truly the discrimination between the unchanging and the changing, what is when we say observe or notice, what is that we have to notice and who is noticing that discrimination, what is the true understanding of detachment, that the happiness is not in objects but it is inherent in the subject, and what is the preparation shat sampati in order to go into atma jnana vichara, the shama, dama, titiksha, uparati, shraddha, samadhana, what they are and how to develop them. So this much is what we have seen so far. And in the last session, we started getting into Atma Tattva Viveka based on the fourth day talk by Prabhuji. And there we realized one thing, that our previous way of contemplating, where each one shares their understanding, was taking a little longer time. So based on that, some of you recommended, can we take one question and everybody shares a quick viewpoint, maybe within 1 or 2 minutes, and then we can kind of keep going round robin, like how we do in the Gita study circle. That was an excellent suggestion by Kamaji for the Gita study. So why not we adopt a similar model here is one of the suggestions. So let us see how that goes today. So we can begin with, here are some questions, but if there are additional questions, please do bring them. We'll just start collecting the questions. Yeah, that way we don't miss any questions. So for example, today we have not only these questions, also some scenarios for contemplation. So like that, we'll go just in a round robin, see if this is a better model. All right. So is this acceptable? Is this okay? Any recommendations?
This will be good, JJ.
All right, wonderful. Yeah. Then, yeah, let's just get started. Let's begin with, so here, within 1 or 2 minutes, each one of you can summarize your understanding related to that question. So the first question is, what is Satya? What is Asatya? What is Mithya? Whoever wants, you can go first. And then the next, and like how we do in the Gita study circle, no? The order naturally occurs.
Vijay, just one question. Are we not doing meditation today? I thought last week we did contemplation. Is it not?
No, last week we couldn't complete the contemplation. We couldn't hear everybody. So,
right, okay.
Yeah. That's the reason why. After you dropped, no, even then we couldn't complete. So therefore, at the end we decided, this week also we'll dedicate for contemplation, and next week we'll go for meditation.
Right, okay. Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah. All right, so who would like to begin first?
I can start.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, so by Satya, we basically refer to the one that is that never changes, is always there. And is always there and real. And by for asatya, it's something which is not real. You can describe it, but it is not there at all. It's a simpler one. And mithya, what we mean is it is there by experience, but on inquiry, it's not there. It's something which you cannot rely on. It's ever changing, right? So you can never hold on to that, to mithya, because it keeps changing, and it seems like it at the time of experience it's real, but then like it's much deeper. If you inquire, it's not real like satya.
Excellent. Okay. Are there examples you would like to provide?
As per our Vedanta, the one there is only one Brahman. So that alone is Satya. That's what we go by, because for everything to be there has to be a source, and that source is the only real one. Right? And for asatya, it's like imaginary thing, like a rabbit with horn, what we say. And for mithya, the world we live in is referred to as mithya. The very reason that like we all are going through this experience, it looks real, but like nothing in this world we can ever hold to. Nothing stays there permanently. Everything was made, and whatever was made or born will die again one day. So it's not the truth. It's not.
Excellent. Thank you, Sarananji. So one question here for everybody, more of a process-related question. So should everybody take up the same question and give their understanding, and then we go to the next question? What do you guys?
I think we should do that.
Yeah?
We'd like to get the views in their own words. No, again, the way I would like to see how everyone explains the concept as well, if there is a better way to put. Yeah.
Excellent. Very nice. Who would like to go next? Gayatri ji, Hari Om.
Hari Om, sir.
Hari Om. Who would like to go next?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Shubhaji.
Okay. Based on my understanding is that I was under the impression that there is only a Satya and Asatya. Till I saw the video, I didn't know about Nitya. So I was under Satya, what I understood is something which is unchanging. That is only the I is the unchanging. So there is no doubt about it. Asatya, yes, the whatever is not possible is Asatya. Then comes the Mithya part. Whichever thing I was thinking is Satya, it is all coming under Mithya. So that is the biggest, where I would say, all these years I was under the impression it is Satya. So something which is everything which is changing is all Mithya. So for example, in one of the thing, I don't know if I can mix up the other questions also with this. See somebody insulting you.
Yeah.
So we used to take that as Satya, but I realized it's all Mithya. So
Excellent.
that is something which is a realization for me. So I take the Ananda story as my example whenever any happenings happen. So, so that is my understanding
What
about
story is that? Shivaji?
Ananda and Buddha story. Vijay ji
Yeah.
keeps telling, no?
Yeah, I got it.
That has like that story has got a very big impact on me right from the day I heard the story from Vijay ji. So I've been using that story. I try not to be Ananda. Of course, I have not reached the stage of Buddha, but I'm not Ananda now, at least that much I know. So in between, I'm trying to become better so that always thinking about the story whenever I get into a situation. So that helps me in not getting into involved like Ananda. So this is what I understood. So Satya, Asatya, Mithya. So everything in between is Mithya. Mithya is what we go through every day in our life. So we have to have control over our senses and our mind. So that automatically helps us in reaching our Satya.
Excellent. Very nice. Very nice. Who would like to go next? And when somebody shares their view, if at all anybody feels there's an immediate question to what they're sharing, that question can be brought up. And if necessary, we'll take it up, or otherwise we'll collect it and we'll go into that question later. Yeah. Who would like to go next?
I can go, Jay.
Yes, Prakashji.
Right. So in my view, there are only two things called Satya and Asatya, right? So something which exists, something which doesn't exist, right? Both for experiential and for even for the intellectual mind. So the Asatya part, leaving apart Asatya part, the Satya itself can be subdivided into the true one, the true Satya, and the Mithya. So the Mithya is actually having some amount of Satya in it. It is not completely empty like Asatya. Why I'm saying this? If Mithya has to be very subjective, like depending on the person, then no scientific invention is possible. For example, if air conditioner cools and it makes me feel comfortable, it should feel the same for you, or at least similar for you, right? So there is some amount of Satya in the Mithya. So but only the difference is the level of comfortness or the level of perception could be different among people. So the Mithya definitely gives is a kind of experiential truth, but the only problem with the truth is it changes from person to person. Therefore, it is not constant, it is not steady. So therefore, it cannot be accepted as the complete truth. So the other part of the Satya, that is the truth, whatever call, is what is called as Satya, what is the real Satya, which is unchanging per definition, and which is what we are trying to understand what it is. What is that Satya is all about, right? So this is how I classify myself, these three things.
Excellent. Would you like to call that unchanging Satya as absolute, and the changing Satya that you said as maybe relative?
Yeah, correct. That is Mithya. But the Asatya is something, could be Asatya is something which is not existing, or it could be a simply creation of the senses. Like Prabhuji gives an example of what he says about a rabbit having horn or something like that, which is totally non-existential or not a reality. So the other part is the Satya, which has the two classification. One is the true Satya, the other one is the Mithya. So at the top level, there are only two things. One is Satya, one is Asatya.
Then
This is how I understand.
Why do you think Vedanta did not think like that? Why Vedanta classified into only three buckets?
That I'm not sure. This is how I understood it. Because see, if Mithya has to be a totally, what to say, it's totally Asatya, let us say, then the experiences cannot be shared among people.
Yeah, in Prabhuji's
I-
talk also, Mithya is not said as asatya. Mithya is not.
I
said
agree,
as-
agree,
Yeah.
agree. So that is what I am also telling. I am telling the Mithya is part of Satya because there is some amount of Satya in the Mithya.
In what way is Satya in the Mithya?
I told you, see, Mithya is the definition of Mithya is that it is changing. It is not something which is constant for everyone, or it is something which is changing all the time,
Hmm.
right? So, but of course it is changing, right? But what I'm saying is, if in my understanding, if Satya has to be real true, it has to be same for all the people all the time.
Hmm.
Right? But Mithya's nature is not that. It is true for some people at some point in time.
Hmm.
But what I'm saying is, even in Mithya, there is some amount of Satya. That part of Satya is that what I talked about, right? See, if I am talking about any experience in the world, let us say a tree looks green to my eyes.
Hmm.
It should look green to everybody else also, to similar in the same, but may not be to the same extent. Somebody may see it as very rich green, and somebody may.
Whenever you're stating such truths, there has to be some sort of a boundary given. Given these conditions, then this is true. You will have to say something like that, isn't it?
Exactly. That's why I'm saying the Mithya is also a classification under the Satya itself.
But can I say that purely from a Vedantic standpoint, they did not give that kind of a condition. They just said anything that is constantly changing is mithya. So even the so-called relative truth, it is not denying the relative truth, and it is not trying to say that this is a kind of a truth. In order to make it very clear to the mind to understand, it is classified as mithya. Is that acceptable?
Yeah, I think that is also acceptable. That is not wrong per se. That is also okay. It is just that how you want to understand it.
Yeah. Okay. Very nice. Yes, sir, Ramanji.
Yeah, so for those two examples, I have a question, right? If you take air conditioning, point number one, it is not giving the same experience to everyone, in the sense, in the room where that air is coming, it's cooler, but to cool the air outside, it's heating. So for a person who is standing just outside the air conditioner wall, he feels extra heat than the person who is sitting inside. So right there, this object, when it was introduced, it gave two different experiences to people. It's not giving the same. So if something is satya, it should give same experience to everyone. But I see that, like, trying to give one experience to one, it gives a completely opposite experience to the other. And number two, it is not there all the time, right? It needs to, like, it requires, it's a dependent one. It requires something. And then, like, when we depend on that, we later on realize that, like, if it is not, like, that root source is not there, then it's lifeless, right? And the same way, if I take the tree one, that green, for that moment it's green, but the question is, will the tree be there all the time, or will the tree will have green leaves all the time? Because we see that sometimes the tree is cut, it's gone, or like sometimes the tree sheds leaves and it's like completely just the branches. So that way again, when we try to hold on to that as satya, I think it contradicts. So basically, on a scale of time, will it remain there? Is it there all the time, giving the same experience? And inside, outside, everywhere, is it giving the same experience? So I see these 2 points.
Excellent. I see that next, I think Padmaji can go. She has also raised her hand. So, sir, Padmaji, first give your understanding and then any other point you want to make.
Yeah, so I am agreeing with Saravananji when he says that, I mean, for me also, like last week itself, I spoke about it. Satya is only the consciousness, which is not changing with time or space or age or anything that you can connect it to. Whereas Mithya is everything else that you see and experience is ever changing, is how I understand Mithya. So I don't have to go by what others feel or how things are appearing, like what Prakashji said. Like a tree is appearing green for everybody. It may be a truth for majority of us. But if there is a blind person, there is no experience there at all. So it is basically derived from your senses and the interpretation the mind gives to that sense, to that particular sense. And so it is again ever changing. If you are a nature lover, the same green tree might give you very good experience. But if you are not a nature lover, or suppose, for example, even an animal, some people are very fearful of dogs, some are not, they just love them. So it's a very personal experience, I feel. All the other things that you see, that you feel, that you hear is very personal to you and very specific, and it is always changing again depending upon how you are feeling also at that particular point of time. If you are into your own thing, like suppose you are angry or you are upset, you might not even notice that thing even being there.
Excellent.
So I think that is the thing. And asatya is very clear. I feel there is no confusion about satya and asatya at all. The mithya part is the one that is, I think, which has to be figured out by each one of us to progress further in, at least spiritually, I feel. So that is the part that we have to understand, I think.
Very nice. Excellent. Who would
I
like
think
to
the concept of mithya is what actually brings satya out. Saying if all what I see is mithya, it's not true, then is there a truth? And that's where this whole satya comes in, saying, okay, that's the right question I was waiting for, and let's get inside now.
Yeah. Also, one more thing I want to add, Vijayji, is I think that there is some things which are universally like common mithya for everybody. That is what I think Prakashji highlighted, I feel, because like that the tree appearing green, or this is a forest, this is land, this is sea, this is water body, this is a mountain. These are common understandings that we have even with our conditionings, personal conditionings. So that is a universal mithya. I think you can put it like that. Some are universal mithya and some is like personal mithya.
So in that statement, only alternate viewpoint I would like you to consider is the tree may not appear green to even to another person who is color blind.
Yeah, correct.
So therefore, that person may not accept it as a tree. The one person may accept it as a mara, because in his mind the word is mara for that object.
Yeah. Also, if you are in a different geographic location, also it might change, right? For a desert, for a person living in desert, there might not be any tree at all. Yes. So I think that's what we have to look at. Yeah.
No. The point is, I'm not telling the experience will not be different. Experience will be different. What I'm telling is the sense organs cannot be wrong all the time. So we cannot say that whatever we perceive from the sense organs are always wrong, or always. See, mithya is a word which is confused with when we say mithya ropa. It means you are making an allegation which is not true.
Okay,
right. So the mithya
part, we'll get to this part anyway. That question is there. Let's hold on to this question. That's also an excellent question to examine. Can we listen to Kamaji and then Gayatri ji?
Yeah, I'll go next. Yeah, I just want to take this point a step further. Yeah, my understanding is satya and asatya, these are constant. I mean, you can say permanent, and mithya is transient. But in my opinion, mithya is actually a subset of both satya and asatya in that sense. Okay, just to extend Prakashji's point, that mithya is basically a stepping stone towards understanding satya. An example I would like to give here is, yeah, people talk about premonitions. Okay. And I have experienced on a couple of occasions, I've heard somebody else also telling me this, that they kind of get a premonition, one of their relative or near and dear ones are going to pass away. Okay, and this have experienced. Now here this is a tricky situation. We say the dream is a mithya, which is true. But the moment you wake up, you say, oh, it's not there. But sometimes it also gives you an information that something is that's going to happen, and which is kind of a permanent in nature. Mostly this example is given of death. Death is certain because this is satya, right? This is a reality. But mithya is giving is preparing. I mean, now the reasoning that is given is mithya is actually helping you to foresee something and be prepared. Okay. Same thing is with asatya. Asatya, sometimes we see our near and dear ones who has passed away, see in our dream. Now here is another example. Like this is again, it's a mithya when you see in a dream. But even in the dream, you sometimes question, "Oh, mother, you have come back," and have you eaten? All these things which we have done this in the past as as a reality. Okay, that instant of time we have experienced this. But the moment you come out of it, you suddenly realize, oh, it's a satya, because the person cannot come back. I mean, that event is over. Okay, so these two examples, I feel, with these two, reasoning, I feel that asatya and satya is permanent, no doubt about it. But mithya is kind of a subset of it, and yeah, that can change.
So one question here, Kamakji, how are you saying asatya is permanent?
Yeah, asatya is something that which is universal, right?
No,
What
asatya is something that never existed. So let's go back to the clarity given about these three ideas. Satya is that which does not change time to time, space to space. It is unchanging. So that is the definition of Satya. Asatya is that which never existed. Mithya is that which is experientially appearing to be true, but only upon inquiry. When you ask the question, is it always there? It doesn't seem to be always there. It seems to be appearing and disappearing. That is the clarity about these three words. Again, going by that, this particular understanding, how are you saying that asatya is a permanent phenomena?
Yeah, because I have never come across a case where you prove that it is not permanent.
No, I'm not. For example, you said somebody appearing in a dream.
Yeah.
Is dream constantly there, and is that person constantly there?
No.
Which means that it is appearing and disappearing in your dream, and that way it is appearing only in your dream, not in my dream, not in Prakash. So here the definition of these three words has to be seen from the context of what Vedanta is saying. Satya is that which is universal and it is not changing. Anyone upon examination will arrive at the same Satya. Asatya and Mithya is experientially true, maybe only for you, maybe not for me, but it is experientially true for you. But it is not permanent. It is true in that moment. You fall, you have a pain in that moment. It is not constantly there. Pain is not constantly there. And I have not fallen. This body is not experiencing pain. That is the definition given about these three words. All right. So yeah. So maybe something for yeah, Prakash ji will come back. Let's listen to Gayatri ji. Gayatri ji, would you like to share your views?
Yes, sir. Just one or two things. Asatya is something which is not available for the sense organs, mind, and intellect. This is the definition of asatya. Even a dream is also still part of mithya. Asatya is which never existed. So if I see something in the dream, that means it's existing. Anything that is available to my sense organs, mind, intellect, cannot be said as asatya. Asatya is basically not existing. Not existing means not available to my mind also to dream or imagine about it. So that is what is asatya. So that's why asatya can always be kept aside. And coming to mithya, so mithya is something which is, as you said, experientially real. Uh, most of us can have the same experiences, but experience itself is a byproduct of mithya. So uh, mithya, uh, and somebody said sense organs cannot be wrong all the time. Sense organs are wrong all the time because, so I see a chair, the other person also sees a chair, all of us can see a chair, but when you look through, take a bit of it and look through the microscope, finally it comes down to atoms and molecules. And atoms and molecules, if you further subdivide it, subparticles, uh, it goes to some other subtler aspect. So what I see with my sense organs is not the actual thing that's there. End of the day, it's all atoms and molecules. But my sense organs are designed in such a way that I will see the gross part, I cannot see the subtler part. If my sense organs are given an X-ray kind of vision, then I see a different thing of the same chair, same tree. If my sense organs are given a microscopic view, I will be seeing only the atoms and molecules. So the sense organs are always wrong. They are designed to see and form in a particular way. That's all. And because I am seeing it in a particular way, I cannot say that this is the right form or whatever it is. So sense organs are designed to see the objects in a particular way. So sense organs are basically, according to Vedanta, what they see is not the actual reality. It's a partial reality. There is a form outside. That's all. I don't know what is that form all about. Mind has given a name to it. But there is a form. I give a name called tree. That's all. So actually, if you go deeper into the tree, we don't know what's there inside it. And there is another thing, because yeah, just because it's common to all, it cannot be termed as satya. Satya has a very strict definition in Vedanta, something that is there with you all the time, all the three states of consciousness, which is dream state, your deep sleep state, what's happening to all your experiences in the deep sleep state. So if something that is there in the waking, dream, deep sleep, that alone, and that alone is defined as satya. And just because some experiences are common to all, there cannot be satya in that. Anything that is changing, those experiences are changing for everyone. So the once my vision starts deteriorating, the same tree starts appearing blurred to me. So it might, the other person might also have the same experience. So can we say that the blurred tree is the actual reality? So this is one point about satya, mithya, and asatya.
Excellent.
I wanted.
Excellent. Gayatriji. So that kind of takes us to the next question very logically. So let's have this clarity about what is Nitya, Anitya, Viveka. See, please understand, Vedanta is a very, like science. In science, you know, you cannot put whatever terms to define whatever concept that you're looking at. When you say inertial frame, there is a very strict definition of what is an inertial frame. There's a very strict definition of what is a non-inertial frame. So like that, here, like Gayatri ji clearly pointed out, we have to see it in the light of what Vedanta is saying as Satya, Mithya, and Asatya. Our interpretation is something, no problem. We can reconcile it later. Yeah. So in that way, now let us take up the question: what is Nitya, Anitya, Viveka that comes up in this particular talk as per Vedanta? So shall we go in the same order? I think Sharavananji started. So we'll go in the same order now. Now that everyone has spoken, we'll use the same order.
Sir, I will talk about it next week, sir. Is that okay? Because I couldn't examine it.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, if you're not prepared, you can maybe listen in, and if at all you have a point, you can raise.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, when it comes to the objects, we are looking at like what is truth, what is real, right? That's where we talk about Satya and Asatya. While Nitya, Anitya, here we are talking about like what is the only thing that's there forever versus rest, which is basically it's not there. So as per Vedanta, Brahman alone is Nitya, which has like no birth and like it's there forever. While everything else which was created will be destroyed, which is born will have its own death. So all those things will basically come under Anitya. So the Anitya basically uh, helps one to realize uh, how to deal with what we experience. Right? So um, I think it helps to develop the detachment part, because when you have this knowledge, you know what to hold on to and what not to hold on to. And I believe that's where the whole uh, misery um, and problems of the world, because without this knowledge, everyone seems to going after the anitya things, right? And this is the knowledge that we get from this, and this knowledge basically helps one to stabilize and to go after the truth. That's my point.
So why is it Viveka? Why is it Nitya?
Viveka is the knowledge we are getting on. So with that knowledge, we should be able to discriminate and like um, understand what is truth, what is nitya, what is there forever existing. In an individual jiva case, it's the atman in the jiva that is the nitya, while everything, the body, mind, intellect, what we see is what we call, it comes under anitya, the world, everything else.
So is it a tool given to you by Vedanta so that you can help discriminate?
And because it's like viveka, knowledge is whatever knowledge a person has, that is the knowledge by which all the actions are based on. If that knowledge is not 100% true, all the efforts are going to be in vain, because that is the foundation on which all my activities are based on. If that knowledge itself is shaky, then basically at a point of time, I realize that, hey, I put so much efforts, and why am I still not happy? Why am I not getting what I want? Right?
Excellent.
I think that is where this Viveka comes in, to say that, you know what, use this to figure out, to figure out how to attend, or like how to deal with everything.
Very nice. Very nice. Thank you, Sharananji. Shubhaji?
Yes, sir. What I understood is Nitya Anitya Viveka is the uh, rather how we discriminate between permanent and impermanent. So that what I understood is Brahman alone is Nitya and everything else is Anitya. So Prabhuji took the example of mud pot. So the mud is what is Nitya, and the pot, the mud can change, become anything. So that is Anitya. So this is how I understood Nitya Anitya Viveka. So if we have that knowledge of Nitya Anitya Viveka, then we can discriminate how our life goes on. So between the permanent and the impermanent, what is going to be permanent and what is going to be impermanent. That way we can be, we know what is our limitation and what is perishable and whatever is not perishable or impermanent. That discrimination we can make a decision on those discrimination in our life.
Excellent. Very nice. Prakash ji?
Yeah, I was thinking, like, for you to compare the definition, all the definitions need to be with respect to one thing, right? So in this case, let's say the time, right? So I think even in the case of Nitya and Anitya, we are talking about the same thing. So if I plot my y-axis as my experience and the x-axis as the time, the Satya is a line which is constant, parallel to the x-axis, right? The Mithya is something, let us say, in sine wave, having either diminishing or increasing amplitude. The Asatya is 0, 0, which doesn't exist. So the Nitya and Anitya is essentially the same as the Satya and Mithya, is it not?
Yeah, but what I see is basically, let's take our own body, right? Not having that knowledge, that even if you have the knowledge that over a period of time, it's not going to be the same, but the mithya comes into the part that, you know what, this is the truth. This is not going to be the same. Mithya and anitya, that is not going to be the same. But one tries to hold on to that experience at that point of time X forever, which is what we are not going to get. Or like it can be applied to anything. A sweet which gave me that experience at that point of time cannot be denied. But then can I hold on to will that experience be available for me forever? Not. Right? Or why can't I just keep having it? That experience itself will change. If I keep having the same sweet again and again, the experience of that sweet will completely change.
Yeah, agree. What I am saying
temporary.
Is the same.
Yeah.
The same definitions when you put it with respect to the time, that what's become Nitya and Anitya.
Yeah, but here the way I'm taking is this word definition is not with respect to time. It is like absolute at any point of time. That is how I'm trying to respond to when I'm answering.
Yeah, agree. So when I'm saying Nitya and Anitya, actually you're talking about Satya and Mithya.
Correct. What the Mithya is the Anitya part. So Mithya is Anitya.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, means it is not permanent. That is correct. So in fact, Nitya is something that is should be even beyond time, in the sense that it cannot be a function of time at all.
But going by the definition, that's how we defined Satya, right? Satya is something which is constant, which is not changing. So when we say changing or not changing, that is always with respect to time.
Correct. Which means what? For example, if something is unchanging, you can even infer that it has to be beyond time.
For another way,
can be. See, that's a possibility. That's just a possibility. What I'm saying is, for the time being, when we say definition, it has to be with respect to time.
There is no other way to define it, no?
Yeah. Vijay, I would like to answer in another way.
Yeah.
I had an experience, and I'm going to come and tell you now. You know what? That mango was so sweet. I cannot it's like I want everyone to have it. And then you ask me, how was it? And I say like, the skin was blue in color. And so the moment I say, right, so you start applying your knowledge to say, okay, the blue mango, okay, there is definitely something wrong here, right? It'll become asatya. Like that person is trying to talk something that is not real. The second one, let's say I see that it was yellow in color, it was very sweet, right? And I'm talking about experience at time t0. And now the person comes and say, I want to have the same experience at time t1. Okay. In the same basket or the same fruit, what I have cut. Now at this point of time, the taste might have completely changed, it might have become stale. Right there, what I'm saying, yeah, you can basically say that, you know what you say may be true for you at that point of X, but I cannot accept it because it is not Satya. It is not going to be there forever at any point of time. So I have to apply my own knowledge again to see whether it is true or not. But a Satya, with no question, no debate, it is true forever, anytime, any place, for anyone.
Very nice.
That is
Listen to
another.
Kamaji and Gayatri ji.
I think Kamaji should be speaking. Nitya,
Ah,
Nitya.
that's why I said first Kamaji and then Gayatri ji.
Yeah, correct. I also am thinking on that. Maybe I agree with Prakashi, whatever he said. I think these two, I think, go in the same lines as Satya and Nitya.
Yeah.
Because I can't think of a situation where this could be different.
Yes.
But one thing which I just want to leave, it's not an answer, it's not a, what should I say, an answer, but just to question Prakashji's thought that Nitya and Anitya, the moment we talk about it, the time dimension comes. But in my opinion, there could be other dimensions as well. But I have no concrete, explanation that whatever he's saying is the final answer. Like one example, I just want to leave. I may be wrong. That if I, for example, relation, I have got two people, okay, and I have one kind of relation with one person, and I've got another kind of relation with another person. Okay, then this two, I don't know. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out that if these two remains permanent in my time frame, then can I take this as a kind of a Nitya and Anitya? I may be wrong, but it's just a point I want to make. That is this always true that the time dimension comes in when you talk about Satya and sorry, Nitya and Anitya?
So Kamaji, there in that example, that very idea of relationship started when you recognize that particular person as your relative. So before that, you were still there, so that then only you could recognize, which means that it is something that has come in at a particular point in time, and it may cease to be there at some point in time. So there is no denial of that experience. Anitya is, I think the relationship is very clear. Anitya is Mithya, connected to the Mithya. So let's listen to Gayatri ji.
So Shubhaji took the mud pot example, saying that mud is impermanent, and so mud pot example was given by Prabhuji when he was talking about the essence of all the forms, essence of the world, essence of whatever we see, essence of myself. Because mud is the essence of the pot, and every object basically is made up of Brahman. In that context, Guruji has given the mud pot example. The pot is me, and the mud is Brahman. So that is the example. Second thing, why is this Nitya Anitya important? It's quite important because my entire life is standing on Anitya as of now, impermanent. I stand on the thought that I am this body, mind, and intellect, which is continuously shaking, moving, changing, everything. It will also die. So if I stand on such concepts like this person in front of me is permanent, I can rely on him and I'll go ahead in life. This body, I am this body, so this body is the most important. I mean, my life is moving based on this body, some set of relations around me, some positions which I have, some finance, some money, some concepts and ideas. So if we see all these things are moving, the best example Guruji gives for Anitya is, so he says, I was in Chennai 20 years ago. I was in Tumkur 5 years ago, and then I'm right now in Bangalore. So that I part never changed. The me feeling inside, that never changed. But throughout, if you see what has been changing, the body has been changing, mind has been changing, intellect has been changing, people around me have been changing, the world is changing, everything else is changing. So that is the best example. So if we really focus on that particular example, and if I look at myself, I can see that, yeah, there is this me feeling inside, the I, the real I feeling, that has never been changing from my childhood. Even when I was playing with toys, yes, this me feeling was there. Today at this age, yes, that me feeling is there. This feeling has not been changing. The body has changed, mind keeps changing every minute, for that matter. Intellect is changing, relationships, people have come, people died, and uh, world has been changing, nature has been changing. So anitya is based on, it's like every object that comes, basically there is a birth and death for everything. What comes will surely go, but what never came, what has a beginning has an end, but something that never had a beginning at all will never have an end also. And that is the nitya part, that is the me, that I feeling inside is the nitya part, which never had a beginning, so will never have an end also. Whereas everything else that I am seeing in my world has a beginning, has a birth, and will have an end, will have a death also. So this is, I know, the importance of nitya and anitya for me to really reach the point self.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Gayatri. So, in a way, in order for us to establish Nitya and Anitya, today we are using two important tools. One tool set we call it as our sense, another tool set we call it as our mind. Because even this intellect is part of the mind only. So the next two things are essentially related to these two tools. So how can you say that your senses are blind? Or is it right to say that the senses are blind? That is the first question. And in a way, tightly connected to that is also the mind, because it's the mind that kind of controls the senses. What is meant by mind colors what's seen? So the question essentially, these two questions 3 and 4 can be put as, can we rely on the sense and the tool, the mind, the tool set called sense and the mind? Can we rely on them? That is the essential question for our next contemplation. Saravananji.
So senses, without the so it's very it's easy to see that each one uses the body as a tool to carry on the task. I think that would be easy to see. So then the point comes is, do I understand this tool? And there is a big difference in a person who uses the tool with the understanding of the tool versus the person who is using the tool without full understanding of the tool. Right? So, for example, before the inquiry part came, we all the people relied on the senses. What I hear is true. What I see is true. And then the inquiry started, and as part of the inquiry, we started. So those who got into that inquiry path realized that, okay, the ears cannot hear all the sound. There is only a part of the sound is what they can hear. And if you use an extra tool, then you can hear other sound as well. In the same way, what the eyes see is not always true. There are the reasons why some things appear like that, but they are not in that way, like color of a sky. There is nothing on above us as a sky where it is painted blue, right? But if you don't have that inquiry, that knowledge, one will say that like, this is what I see, so that it has to be blue in color. The world looks flat to me, so it has to be flat. While on inquiry, we find out that it is not so. So the senses, while we can, we basically need to use it with the full knowledge of how the senses work, with the limitations, so that we will never be in a state where we make a mistake, or we end up in frustration that I relied on these tools and they didn't work out for me to reach my destination. That is how I put the senses.
Excellent.
Should we complete the fourth one also together, or we want to go separately?
If you think it is kind of tightly connected, you can.
No, otherwise, yeah, we'll go separate. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Shubhaji?
Yes, sir. I would like to combine both 3 and 4 because I feel ultimately mind also comes in the sense part.
Yeah.
So based on our conditioning, each person's senses and mind works. So it's quite different, and the way we see it is also different. So coming back to the point, I don't know much to. I don't have much to add. What Saravanan said is what I have in mind also. So at the end. So it is our senses which creates that illusion of everything is Satya. So as I said in the first question itself, based on my conditioning, I was thinking everything was Satya, but it's actually Mithya. So that way our senses are blind is what I would like to add.
So you are essentially saying senses do not give us the full picture.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay.
Whatever I see may not be the same thing what the other person sees.
Sure.
So based on that, I may conclude and I may, that leads to Mithya, like the misunderstanding of what I am right, the other person is not right. So that's why I feel senses are blind. That includes mind also.
Yeah. So senses part, because they are not allowing us to see fully,
Yes.
can be called as blind. But how do you conclude the same thing about the mind?
Mind is like literally our conditioning, no? What I may see as beautiful may not be beautiful for you, and you may not agree to that. But we think that that is Satya, and we want the other person also to agree on that. That is where all the miseries come in.
Excellent. So because mind itself is a collection, and that collection is dependent upon the person, so therefore you are saying mind is also incomplete.
Yes.
Very nice. Okay. Thank you, Shubhaji. Prakash ji, how about you?
Yeah, I agree with all the interpretations so far, but only thing I would like to add is I don't want to call the senses are blind. All that I can say is the senses are not complete. They give you only part of the information, and therefore it is not complete. And in terms of experience, right, it's all depends on how your mind infer it, how your mind infer from the information it got. So therefore, again, that is based on the individual, based on his experience, based on his thoughts. So again, it varies from person to person. So therefore, again, it is not truth. That can be
inferred clearly,
easily concluded. Yeah.
And the only part you would say is for number 3, rather than saying how can you say that the senses are blind, how would you phrase the question?
To answer that question, how can you say that your senses are blind? No, senses are not blind. The senses are not complete.
So therefore, the
question can be, can you say the senses are complete? Or
okay.
we can other way, how can you say the senses are not complete?
Okay.
Or like, Can I trust the senses 100%?
Can I trust that? Is the,
Yeah,
Excellent.
correct.
Okay.
I think blind is not the right word, is what I'm saying.
Okay. Fair enough.
I think in one way, all the world's problem today are because of that. That like the 3 and 4. Everyone is seeing their
No,
own
no,
way.
it is because of mind, I think, rather than the sensors. The sensors are doing its job. That's it. It's sensor. The how you interpret it is once as somebody put it, conditioning. A
Yeah.
terrorist also has a mind and sensors. Sensors are
Clear
telling what
mind.
it is.
Only one point there, Prakashji, you may want to consider is sometimes the senses can be incomplete. For example, there's a colorblind person, the sense organ is not functioning completely. Or somebody who's deaf is not able to hear. So in that way, senses are not the same for everybody. Sensors also are.
There is wrong sensor or a
wrong
malfunctioning sensor.
Malfunctioning.
That is a different question.
Very nice. Okay, Padmaji wants to share something about this.
Yeah, so I think I a little bit agree to what Prakash ji said right now, that senses are just absorbing whatever you're seeing, feeling, however you want to put it. All the 5 senses, whatever their thing is, they're doing it. But essentially, it's the mind which is giving it an interpretation. And what the mind is interpreting it as is something that has been put into your head by someone else. So it is essentially limited to what the view of the other person is. For example, like when I first time would have seen a tree, I would have been very small and I would have just pointed a finger to it. But there would have been an adult or somebody who knew what it is or who thinks what it is would have given a name to it. Like I would have said probably, oh, wow. And then that person would have said, yeah, that wow is called a tree. And so my mind registered it as tree. If it was somebody else who would have told me that that's not a tree, that's a mountain, I would have taken it like that. So essentially, I think these two go hand in hand, and it is very limited. What we know it to be is very limited. For example, if you are somebody who's standing at that point outside an Amazon forest, they wouldn't call it as a tree for you because there are many. Like you can't count it as trees anymore. So again, it's a collective name that somebody else is understanding it as forest. So they would have said that this is forest for you. So I think every sense is like that. So in that sense, I don't think that senses are complete or incomplete. They just absorb everything that you are that is there in the world, or what that you are seeing or whatever. It's just absorbing. The mind is the one that is giving the name and the feeling to it. So for example, even the elements around that you see, whether it is fire or whether it is a child doesn't understand that you should not put a hand into the fire. It is somebody else who's telling that, first time when the child goes near it, somebody is telling that, oh no, that's dangerous, don't go and put your hand. Otherwise, if you don't stop the child, he will go and put the hand in it because he doesn't have an understanding of that is hot, I should not touch it, or it can probably do something to your physical body. I think so, like you said, when we are very little, we have the very good understanding of what is satya and mithya, probably without even somebody telling you. That is why, because you feel that you are permanent, you go and do things like that. And with conditioning, all the other things come into picture, I feel, sir.
Excellent. Very nice. Wonderful. Kamaji?
Yeah, I mean, I resonate with whatever these people have said, Padmaji and Prakashi.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the moment you talk senses, but of course that goes along with mind. I think some of these questions are related.
Yeah.
Because if you are in deep sleep, your mind is not there, right? Or temporarily it ceases to exist. So you don't discriminate, or you don't process. I won't say discriminate. You don't process that information that you get.
Yeah.
But there are some senses which are not conditioned in a sense, like for example, just to give an example, you're sleeping and there's a mosquito bite. The mind doesn't say go and hit the place or scratch the place where the mosquito is bitten. Just an example. So it is not blind, it is still functioning, but the moment the mind comes in, then you start wondering how to process it. This is my way of looking at it. The question or this response to this question is, maybe this is the way I have understood this question. Okay, so this is what it is.
Excellent. So just one point to consider there is, in the deep sleep, that the mosquito is biting is only from somebody who's standing outside, inferring that somebody else is in deep sleep. For the one who is in deep sleep, there is no such even the awareness of the world. Is a
Yes.
point to consider.
Even I don't want to say deep sleep. It is a sleep. It is a kind of a state where you have not got into deep sleep, but your body is still responding to it. Okay, because finally, this is what. For example, just to take an example of Padmaji, what she said about fire. Yeah, we all know that there's a fire, but just to take on a lighter note, suddenly if there's a power cut, you're sleeping, your fan is on or an AC is on, and there's a power cut. Okay, what will happen is the body will immediately react because the body has to function, but your mind is not actually dictating it. The moment you come to a state where no, the mind starts processing that information, you get up and do something about it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a very important question. We need to dig deeper into that, but we'll come to that later. But I think, about 3 and 4, what you are also saying is you're agreeing with what the others are resonating. Gayatri ji?
Yes, sir. Padmaji and Prakashji have brought it out very nicely. So as Prakashji stated, yeah, senses are blind is a wrong word. Senses don't show the actual reality and they are limited. So then we have these tools, the 5 senses and the mind. So senses, their job is to just whatever is within their capacity, they collect the inputs and then they send it to the mind. Mind does the processing, and while processing, how can a mind process? Based on its own data. The data is all the concepts, beliefs, ideas that the mind is having. It starts processing. Senses have their own limitations. So we have heard about this optical illusion where the sky appears to be blue, but in reality, the sky is not blue. And then the mirage in the desert. So, and also other than that, there is something called inference. If there is a smoke, we think that there is a fire. It need not be fire all the time. So the senses give a very, very limited picture of what is there out. So Guruji gives this example of the 5 blind men trying to know what is the elephant. In reality, it's an elephant. So they touch the somebody will touch it and understand something from that, and somebody will touch the tail, he gets a different sensation. Somebody will touch the trunk and he'll think, oh, that the elephant is like this. Somebody will touch the ears and it thinks it's soft. So how they perceive from the a different point of views on the same elephant with their limited sense organs, and how they come to a conclusion that this is the reality. This is how an elephant looks like. So somebody is asking, how does white appear a blind man? So the guy takes him to a white wall and you see this is white. He thinks white is something which is hard. And then no, it's like milk. He'll touch the milk. Oh, white is something which is a liquid. So this is how actually our sense organs are operating. It's a fragmented view of what we are seeing. The touch sensation gives something to the mind. The forms that go through the eyes give something. The hearing gives something, and the smell gives something. And all this is together put by the mind, and it adds its own labels, ideas. That is coming from its childhood. The example that's given here is a cow stands in front of a child, a cow stands in front of a businessman, and the cow stands in front of a meat eater. So how do they perceive? You know very well how they perceive. So that's what the mind does here. So this is in total how the sense organs and the mind are, driving us, driving our life. And it's also stated in Vedanta that the waking state which we see is a completely a projection and a creation of the mind and sense organs. And the dream state that we see is a complete creation of the mind alone. There are no sense organs involved. So how do we rely on such sense organs and mind? So what is there to rely on? The Veda Pramana, what the Upanishads say, and what a guru says, end of the day. That's all.
Very nice. Looks like Kamaji wants to make a point. Please, Kamaji.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know if I heard her correctly. She said about the mind processing it, when it comes to sensor. I think it is the brain which actually does the processing. It's the mind which actually discriminates. Is my way of looking at it. I may be wrong.
No, brain is a set of chemical stuff, so it doesn't do any processing. So mind intellect is the one which does the processing. A brain is just facilitates the whole input of the senses, and so brain is typically used by the mind. Brain is an inert object.
So again, I think this particular point, Kamaji, maybe has to be seen in the light of there is something that is beyond the physical organ. So that capability is what is being referred as mind. Now, mind itself cannot be pointed at. Nobody can say, okay, where is the mind? For example, even the nose is like the mind, because your nose may look like your grandfather's nose. So in a way, the ability to remember has got imprinted as this nose. So mind is something that is beyond the physical organ called brain, through which the processing is happening. Of course, without the brain, that processing itself cannot happen, and that itself cannot be displayed outside. But here she is referring to something which is beyond that. Now, how to recognize that? That itself is a separate topic altogether. So for the time being, we can keep it as an open question. Yeah. So now coming back to the time management. So it's almost 8 o'clock. First question I want to ask is this approach of how we are going with this, is this acceptable? Is this a good approach?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir, because we get to hear all the viewpoints on the particular question, and we can also pose questions to others regarding the same, rather than saying it as a summary. So you might not remember all the points that are coming from various people. This is a better approach, I think.
Okay. So is this acceptable to everyone? Shall we adopt this model? Maybe we can, we don't have to be fixed. We can see how this works over the next 2-3 sessions. And if it doesn't, we can change. Okay, very good. That was the first question. Now, the next thing is, when we go like this, again, we don't have to be bound by the feeling that, okay, we are still in the 4th day talk and we still are only 4 questions. It is not the speed with which we are completing the talk that matters. It is the quality with which, we are realizing the content. So therefore, I feel it is okay that, next session we can have the meditation, and then after that, we can still be on the 4th day talk only. Is that also acceptable to everyone else?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. We have to go with the group. We have to get everyone.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, we need to understand every concept. Otherwise,
Yeah.
it's half of it. If we leave it, then that still will be questions at the end of the day.
Very nice. Wonderful. All right. So then, just to summarize, today we spoke about and we contemplated upon the Nitya Anitya Viveka essentially. So, I usually like to see things visually. So therefore, there's a simple picture. The one that is unchanging, the thing that is shown as a streak is the unchanging. Again, it is not something to see itself, but just to visualize. Yeah. And Mithya is changing. Clearly, you can see everything, include the body, is changing. Never existed is asatya. And then we also went into senses and the mind are, again, some of you may take objection to the word blind. but in a sense that it is incomplete. So we can accept the interpretation that it is incomplete, which has been termed here as blind, and it can definitely be, if it makes it better, incomplete. All right. So this is what is, we have seen so far. In our next session, when we get into it, we'll go into the rest of the questions. So for today, this much is what we have contemplated upon. So we can go back to our closing prayer. Sarananji, again, because you started the prayer. Today you can be the one
Okay.
and help us with the closing prayer too.
Right seeking. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead me from untruth, ignorance to truth, darkness to light, impermanence, death to permanence, immortality. Self is the whole. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. That is complete. This is complete. And completeness is removed from completeness. What remains is complete. When completeness is added to completeness, totality remains complete. Om, peace, peace, peace. Who am I? Nanu, Nanenbadu, Nanalla, Ideha, Manabuddhi, Nanalla, Sachidanandatma, Shivananu Nani, Shivoham, Shivoham, Shivoham. I am not the body, mind, intellect. I am the pure consciousness, Shivaswarup. I am true self is liberation. Atmadarshanam, Brahmadarshanam, Brahmadarshanam, Satyadarshanam. Recognition of self is recognition of the whole. Recognition of the whole is the truth.
So this one we added now. As you know, we are going through a challenging time in the world. So that all the beings are free from suffering. This is the Mahamrutyunjaya mantra. Please go on, Sarananji. So let us chant it 3 times.
Yeah. May all be free from suffering. Om Triyambagam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarkamiva Bandhanat Mrityurmukshya Mamratat. Om Triyambagam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarkamiva Bandhanat Mrityurmukshya Mamratat. Om Triyambagam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarkamiva Bandhanat Mrityurmukshya Mamratat. We worship the three-eyed one who is fragrant and who nourishes all. Like the fruit falls off from the bondage of the stem, may we be liberated from death, from mortality. Lokaha samastaha sukino bhavantu. Lokaha samastaha sukino bhavantu. Lokaha samastaha sukino bhavantu. May all beings be happy, healthy, and peaceful. Om. Thank you. Hari Om.
Hari Om to all the Atma Jyotis. Let us meet next Sunday. Next
Hari
Sunday,
Om, sir.
yeah,
Hari
next
Om.
Sunday will be a meditation session.
Yes, sir.
Hari Om. Thank you, sir.
Hari
Thank
Om.
you, sir.
Yeah.
Hari Om. Hari Om.
Om.